where I stand as a black woman here in this world, in this planet Earth that belongs to the original people. And so, without further ado, we want to bring up Minister Keith, Student Minister Keith Muhammad, representing for Oakland, California.
In the name of the one God. In the Arabic language, we call him Allah, the beneficent, the merciful. I bear witness that regardless to land, label, or language, that God is one. I bear witness that Abraham, that Moses, that Jesus, and Muhammad are his servants and messengers. It gives me great honor to greet you on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it is on their behalf that I give you the greeting words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. First to Mother Wanda, to Sister Tatiana, to all of those who know and love our beloved Brother Oscar Grant. Of course, to Uncle Bobby, Cephas, his wonderful wife, Sister Beatrice, and to all of the members of the family and community that have agreed that on January the 1st, that we would remember the life of our brother and what his life is producing in our midst. One of the greatest men of history is revered all over the world, most notably on Sunday mornings, who gave his life at a young age. You call him Jesus. And out of our love for him, knowing his love for us, we know that he loves us because the scripture teaches that greater love have no man than he give his life for his friend. And on the morning of January the 1st of 2009, Oscar, on the platform with his friends, became the voice of defense for his friends, became the voice of reason for his friends, became the victim of devilish men from an enemy on behalf of his friends. Oscar made the greatest demonstration of love that any of us could ever make. He laid his life down for his friends, and for that he will never be forgotten. And I heard one of our brothers in the libation declare that we should never forget. And as our native brothers were reciting the prayer and beating the drum, each of us should forever know that that is a message to us that they have not forgotten. And we are here today on January the 1st of 2013 because we have not forgotten. Now, over the holiday weekend was the release of a movie that have stricken great fear in folk. Because in that movie, we have visually a fantasy that a black man who remembered what happened to himself and his family would stand in a way that this land declared that no black man should ever stand. I think his name was Django. And when we look even at the name, I don't know what it means. I haven't researched it that far. But if he said his name was Jimmy, or he said his name was Tom, or he said his name was Mark, you might not have known how to take that. But when he said his name is Django, that brought up for many a Kunta Kinte type of memory. In other words, there is something that we must know that gives us rise to what must be done. And what we've been divorced from, divided away from, for all the days that we have been here, has been a more complete and thorough knowledge of our own. so that when we gather on days like these days not only remember our brother Oscar, these days remember every one of us that laid our life down against an unjust attacker. So with us today, and I don't know if all have been introduced, and neither do I know if I can possibly introduce all, but there are many of us whose families have been victimized to the death by police brutality. And then there are many others whose families have been victimized and have suffered from police brutality. So with us today are the names of so many that, as our brother was reciting in the libation a history that we must know, he declared that there were some 3,000 known lynchings in America between the end of the Civil War and really up until about mid-1930s. And if we did the calculation, we'll discover that a black man or woman or child in America was lynched once every 4 days or so. But if we do the modern mathematics and we look at how many of our people are murdered by law enforcement in America, it breaks down to 1 in every 3 days. In other words, we lose our lives faster to law enforcement than we lost our lives on the end of the rope from the Ku Klux Klan, white supremacists, and other demons that have terrorized us ever since we were brought here.
Break it down, brother.
I want to say that again because we can miss that. 1 in every 3 days are murdered by police. 1 in every 4 days were murdered by the Ku Klux Klan and their partners. Well, quite frankly, law enforcement across America found a great migration out of the Klansmen of the South into Oakland, California, into Detroit, Michigan. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his childhood witnessed 2 lynchings when he lived in Georgia. And like many of our people, he fled the South because he knew if he sat under this, he would have to either give his life or take a life in defense of his love for his own people. So he moved to Detroit. And when he got there, he discovered that in the South, you could find us in the woods hanging from a tree. But in Detroit, you would find us shot down in the middle of the street by law enforcement. So when Attorney Raines decided that his argument would be to move this trial out of Oakland, among the first things he declared, he wrote out a history. And in it, he confessed. If you listen to those in law enforcement and government, if you listen close, they'll tell you what they've done. He confessed that OPD had a deep and long history of bringing in abusive characters and hiring them. And from them, they brutalized the community so much that the suffering they inflicted on us gave rise to an answer to our prayer in the Black Panther Party. Who's gonna stand up and defend us? That's an answer to a prayer. Who's gonna stand up and fight for us? That's an answer to a prayer. Who's gonna stand in the gap between our abuser and our innocent children? That's an answer to a prayer. Prayers are answered every day in the birth of our children. And we know that each and every one of our babies that we're looking at, we're not just looking at a chip off our old block. We're looking at extensions and expressions of the oneness of God. You know that when your children were born, they had done no evil. And you look on them and declare, that is a child of God. Now the enemy have worked so hard, as I wind this down, to keep us away from a knowledge of self. That's what concerned them when we began to recite, I am Oscar Grant. Or if you're in Florida and you recite, I am Trayvon Martin. or if you went to the movie and you came out reciting, "I am Django." They never wanted that we would remember. And all of these that have gathered here today have not only gathered to remember, but when you know better, we know there's something that we must do better. So these families, the families of Brother Bluford, the Rivera family, the Harding family, the Romero family, the Dueñez family, and your families. I can't possibly recite all of the names because too many of us have suffered. But in reality, we are one people that have suffered from an oppressor. In fact, our captivity was legalized. That's why it is written in the book of Isaiah, the 49th chapter, "Shall the lawful captive be delivered?" And then it allows those that captured us to know that somewhere down the line, justice will be served. And when that justice is served, they won't miss it, because according to the scripture, there would be blood up to the horse's bridle. So when you look at people all over the country losing their minds, we're coming into a time where justice must be served. We don't have to deliver it with our hands. There are those that are losing their minds and delivering it themselves. There are some who have become imbalanced as a result of injustice, and imbalance creates a new kind of thinking. In fact, they hoped that they had put so much fear and ignorance in us that if we are approached by law enforcement, we would just tap dance and go away. But in reality, there's something in this new generation that says that is fearless, that says that is willing to fight, that says that is willing to stand. The only question becomes, do our young people, have we given to them an adequate knowledge so they would know who to fight, where to stand, and how to fight? I don't want you to be frightened, but Oscar was not frightened. Jesus was not frightened. All of those that were confronted by evil, that took bold stance, they were not frightened any longer. It's not that the weapon of your enemy may not be big. It may be. But the greatest weapon that we have is our faith and our unity to stand against injustice.
That's right.
Then we can look injustice in the eye and declare to those that represent the unjust, we're resisting the devil, and you will flee from us. We're here today because the stand that you all have made, my sister Derica, that on January the 7th, when the rallies began to unfold right here at the Fruitvale BART station, we began to gather. And we gathered for the purpose of saying to Satan, we will resist you. And the way you have gone will not be permitted to go any longer. There comes a time in all of our lives we may have to say to the government, just shut it down. If you can't do right, just shut it down. If you don't understand right from wrong, just shut it down. If you don't know injustice when you see it, just shut it down. We went to the BART meetings. They said, we didn't see any wrong shoot. Just shut it down. We went to the courtroom. They didn't see anything right. Just shut it down. Evidently, you don't know the difference between right and wrong, but we do. And so we thank God that we who are standing together, we must pledge ourselves to remain together and make sure that of the histories and the struggles that our people are enduring, that we never allow ourselves to forget. In fact, use every medium that you have. Let the community know what happened to Brother Bluford.
Let the community know what happened to Brother Rivera. Let the community know what happened to Brother Romero. In fact, let the community know what's happening each and every day. Remember, 1 in every 3 days, one of our people are killed at the hands of law enforcement. Don't be afraid to stand for justice. May Allah bless and keep us. Have a wonderful New Year's. I greet you all in peace. Happy birthday to Mother Wanda. And thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Student Minister Keith Muhammad spitting that flame. Shut him down. Now check it out. Minister Keith said, what? We must never forget, and we gonna shut him down. Minister Keith is a real humble leader. We just talked about this in a study group the other day. But he did write a book. Because like he said, it's very important that we never forget. Okay? And if we move on and years and generations go by, we're going to allow others to tell our story. But no. Mr. Keith said never forget. And so he made this book written by Minister Keith Muhammad. You see it? We must never forget. And this is the story of Oscar Grant. Grant Justice, Lessons Learned, Fighting for Justice in the Murder of Oscar Grant by Minister Keith Muhammad. And so I want to make sure that we can get more of these in circulation, but I just wanted to show you because it is true that we must never forget. And Black people united will never be defeated. So that's what I've been taught. And so we got to stick together and make it happen.